The evacuation had begun suddenly, but not without warning. Unidentified planes had been buzzing the islands for months, and U.S. Army intelligence had repeatedly warned Japanese imperial forces were preparing to invade Alaska, America's northern frontier.
People scared of hearing the planes. Nighttime, you could hear those planes. People, sometimes they hear the planes, they knock on the doors, you know, like outside. Hey, turn your lamps off, turn your lamps off. Everybody was scared. They blacked out, everybody, you know. They don't want to see the lights down at the village.
The world was at war, and a new enemy close at hand. The Alaskan Defense Command had been created under the control of General Simon Bolivar Buckner. More than 5,000 soldiers were ordered to garrison a heavily fortified post at Dutch Harbor, near the Aleutian village of Onalaska.
There were dugouts and foxholes being dug everywhere. The sirens, when they went off, we had to move. We had to move to our designated areas, and everyone had a designated area. And our family happened to be down by the town creek, and we were in a large dugout on the side of the riverbank. I remember my mother always brought holy water and holy bread with us, then because I guess each time you never knew if it was the real thing. I remember one particular morning, it was a bright sunny day, and I woke up and looked out of the big hole, the entranceway, and across the creek, all the military men, all of a sudden they were there. It seemed to me like overnight.
When Pearl Harbor was bombed in December 1941, Buckner ordered the evacuation of all white women and children from Unalaska. Even the prostitutes were told to go, allowing the Navy to take over a brothel for storage space. But there was no agreement on whether to remove the Aleuts, American citizens all, from harm's way.
These decisions must be made by military authorities. The sooner the
Aleuts
better.
would be safer placed upon other islands.
These people could never adjust themselves to life
Request
outside
authority
their
to evacuate all natives.
Federal
of
and Alaska territorial officials seemed incapable of reaching a decision, their arguments clouded by paternalism, prejudice, and political jealousies.
Their immoral nature makes them a menace to soldiers and other workers at the base.
Try to teach them safety, but of course they have primitive tendencies and forget. Some of our Alaskan natives are in for serious
I would like to clean out the entire town.
In my mind, we were just nuisance, okay, as far as the government was concerned. Yes, it was time of war, but we were citizens of the United States.
Around the world, GIs were fighting a desperate war against fascism. But at home, America still placed race above individual rights.
The treatment we got was not right. And I don't think anybody else should go through what we did.
Shortly after midnight on June 2nd, 1942, air raid sirens shattered the peace. Japanese aircraft carriers and bombers had been sent to attack Dutch Harbor with the aim of diverting U.S. forces from the naval battle of Midway, 2,000 miles to the south.
Everything went so fast. We had to get to the bomb shelter, and so many people scared. It was just unbelievable.
The airstrike set in motion a full-scale 15-month battle, second only to Iwo Jima for bloody hand-to-hand combat. Unopposed Japanese troops seized the islands of Kiska and Attu, 850 miles west of Dutch Harbor. On Kiska, 10 U.S. weather crew were captured. On Attu, a white radio operator was killed, and 42 Aleuts and a white schoolteacher were taken prisoners.
Well, it's sad because we couldn't do nothing about it. The chief of Attu who told the Coast Guard the Japanese will be here. That was Mike Hudikoff. They didn't listen to him.
Hudikoff would die in Japanese POW camp in 1945. 16 other Atuans perished along with him. Incredibly, even as enemy forces became more entrenched, officials continued bickering over whether to evacuate the Aleuts. Finally, Navy Admiral Charles Freeman made a command decision, ordering the immediate evacuation of all natives from the Aleutian Islands.
It was an unhappy story of the government bungling something. And I think they were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to protect people, but they didn't have the wherewithal to do it very well, and they managed it miserably. And it had terrible costs for a great many of the Aleuts.
We were evacuated out of here. My father couldn't go because he was white.
Aleuts had intermarried with Caucasians for nearly 2 centuries, but officials adopted a blood quantum rule. Anyone of 1/8 or more native blood was compelled to ship out immediately.
My father was from Manchester, England, and he was in the Navy. And he got stationed up in Alaska, and he was stationed in St. Paul. That's where he met my mother. And they got married, and they moved to Alaska. We had a big family, and we always had extra people for dinner, people visiting us. We always had a house full.
Our family was never again together. Never again. So when we left here, when we were evacuated from here, we never got together again. So
I think that the context that explains the Aleut episode after the invasion of the Japanese and the bombing of Dutch Harbor, I think what explains all of that is racism. It's a blatant racism, and by blatant I mean it's a racism that no one feels they need apologize for. And that reflects where American culture was in the 1940s and still into the 1950s.
Like Americans of Japanese descent, Aleuts would find themselves shunted into government camps. Suspected of nothing, accused of nothing, Aleuts never imagined they too would be segregated, isolated in American gulags. Dark, dank camps, mired in the coastal muck of southeast Alaska's dense, intemperate rainforests.
One of the problems was that they weren't really respected as individuals. What this country stands for very much is personal dealing between the government and the citizens. That was one of the things that had gone off the rails in a very profound and important way in the beginning of the Second World War. And given the terrible conditions in which people were placed, it puts a heavier weight on the government shoulders.
Everybody on board from Alaska was at the railing, just saying goodbye to home and hoping to be back soon. And my father had come out, and my mother had held me up to the railing so I could say goodbye. And I was dressed in my Sunday school coat, and for going to Sunday school every Sunday, I'd earned a Sunday school pin. And I had a pair of my Sunday school gloves. And we had a good view of our house. And my dad was out there jumping up and down and doing this, and I could still see his white sleeves.